Hi, my name is Eddy Parisi. I am the author of From Geek to God, the novel. And what I would like to do with this video is tell you why you'd want to read my book. So, this book actually is a thought that came to me while I was sitting in church one day, and it kind of beat my mind up. Like it took me several months of reviewing this in my mind the way I had pictured it in church when I'd kind of blacked out and this thing just came to me like a ton of bricks. And I knew I had to write the book because, needless to say, the Holy Spirit of God was encouraging me to write this book. So the story begins, this guy, he grows up in California. And, back then it was in the 60s. This is when they had hippies, long-haired people, peace signs, love, peace, rock and roll. And, the people would sit around the park and they would listen to live rock and roll. And there was, needless to say, a whole bunch of dope smoking going on. And they would sit in circles and pass a wine bottle around, smoke a joint, pass that around. And that's what life was like living in California in the 60s if you were hip. So it was either that or you were, just totally, had your hair shaved and you were, more like an army brat kind of kid that, just was everything was yes, sir, no, ma'am, that kind of thing. So Tommy was the kid who would go intermingle with the hippies. And they got along with him. He got along with them fine. And he'd go watch them do their dope smoking, listen to music. And he was just a hip little kid. And needless to say, he had the hair down about his shoulders and wore T-shirts. He had blue jeans that had holes in the pants. And make a long story short, he was just a regular California kid. And then one day his dad comes home and tells him that they've got to move because he lost his job and the only thing available is with the same company on the opposite end of the country, which is on the East Coast. So he had this little girlfriend he had met when he was going to school, and him and her got really close, and he had to say goodbye to her. And it was just devastating to him because he just, he was kind of in love with this girl as young as they were. And then he moves to the East Coast, and there, needs to say, it's a completely different science. All the kids have buzz cut haircuts, and they're wearing penny loafer shoes instead of tennis shoes, and they're all wearing collars on their shirts, no T-shirts, and no blue jeans with holes in them. So he's like an alien. And when he gets there, needs to say the kids don't accept him because he's just really different. And so he goes through this adjustment period and all these weird things happen to him. Like, he gets nervous. He likes to fart. I mean, not that he likes to fart, but it's his response to things when he's nervous. So he has these little problems and the kids just can't get along with him. So after a while, he gets to the point where, he gets popular all of a sudden. He gets in all these fights and he, not by choice again, he doesn't want to fight, but these kids pick fights with him and he just beats the living crap out of them. And he's a lover. This guy, he doesn't want to fight. And just kid after kid after kid, he beats their asses and all of a sudden they start respecting him. Well, after he starts getting popular and he meets this chick and he falls in love with her, sort of. But he eventually gets real popular with all the girls. And so after, he makes his rounds, he needs to say a lot to little girlfriends, and he goes through them, and he eventually in high school finds this really cute girl, and they go to the high school dance, and right there, that's the time when you really got to be cool or, look good or be somebody, and he's got the cutest girl in school there with him. So he leaves the girl to go get a drink, and he comes back, and she's gone. And he looks at the door, and she's walking out the door with the high school bully, who's a real badass. I mean, nobody would mess with this guy. He was a bad boy, and you didn't want to mess with him. So the character's all ticked off, and he walks outside, and there's this other kid that he knows from class who he kind of antagonized, and they became friends. But this guy was with another guy who eventually became the character's best friend. Well, that night, they get all ramped up, and this guy that they meet for the first time, who's his best friend, they literally jump in this guy's Jeep, they run to her house, and they start throwing eggs at it. Then the bully comes outside, and the character ends up beating up the bully. So, to make a long story short, this becomes a beginning of a friendship, and then after the friendship goes on, they end up going on a road trip. And in this road trip, they do the craziest things, and a lot of it reverts back to things like there's a movie with Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder, and one night they are sleeping in this, I think it's Alabama, and the cop comes up and says, "Y'all can't be loitering here or sleeping out here in this public place." And the cop says, "You guys are going to have to go to jail or you're going to have to leave." And they're like, "Go to jail? You talking about a place where there's a bed?" And the cop's like, "Well, of course." And they're like, "Yeah, we'll go to jail." So walking in the jail cell, they revert back to that movie, and they walk in there going, "We bad." That's right, we bad. So you have to go see the movie where Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor go to that prison. And so always, the people inside the jail cell, all the inmates, whatever they're that night, were laughing because at the time that movie was popular and they all knew what that was about. So they're walking in, "We bad." That's right, we bad. And, just to get a rise out of everybody. So that's just one of the things. And then, at one point they go into this strip bar, and the main character actually gets up on stage and he starts dancing, and all the girls got off stage and they were watching him dance. And anyway, it's just all these weird things go on this road trip. But the road trip's definitely a very interesting part of the book. So there's 3 stages of the book. The first stage is the road trip, which is the main part of the book. I don't want to give away too much information in that because there's just too much to say about it. Then the second stage, when they get back, this is where there's a love affair and a romance. So he meets this girl and he falls in love with her. He eventually has to get a job. So Tommy, he was the class clown. This guy used to walk in restaurants on his hands. I mean, literally, this is what this guy did. He was the clown of clowns. And so he really wasn't a smart guy. He just goofed off in school, and he was just a character. I mean, life was just free flowing, and it didn't matter what happened today or tomorrow. Just go with it, right? And so he needs to get a job so he can marry this girl. And this is a true story now, because this is what I didn't tell you, that most of this book is based off a true story and life experience. So he finds a job in this town, and it's the only job available as an engineer. So through some investigative work, he bluffed his way into this job, and he gets in there, and he's just skating his way by every night. And what he does, he goes to the library, and he does this investigative work at the library, and he's looking through these books, and he's cross-referencing, and he's actually coming up with a solution to these designs and these prints and things he's supposed to be working on. And then not long after that, they came up with a process improvement plan for manufacturing. And they asked him if he'd get involved in it. He's like, "Sure," because in his brain, it's like, "I don't know what the hell I'm doing anyway, so why not?" And he gets involved in it, and then he discovers the fact that there's a sigma process, and it's finding 3 deviations off a bell curve. And what he did is, when he got to doing it, he discovered that he understood this, and he perfected it. So he ended up finding out that if you do this 3 more times, you get a very precise diagnosis or analysis, right? So they called it 6 Sigma instead of 3. And then he becomes kind of famous in a certain way, and people seek him out. He ends up going to work for Toyota, and when he goes to work for them, he helps them create the world's most reliable car. And as a part of that, he makes them one of the largest car manufacturers, and they are booming. And at this point, this guy's really famous now because he has perfected this 6 Sigma. So he's sought after. He's getting very wealthy, and in some ways kind of famous, in that certain world of manufacturing and engineering, this and that and the other. So he eventually becomes a big butthole. He pisses people off. He doesn't have any friends, and he just runs all the people out of his life. But he's happy with this because he's so sure of himself. He's just become this nerdy, geeky idiot, a mean, dumb guy in a certain way, but super intelligent. So he always had this inner genius. He just didn't know about it. So now that he's this genius who's perfected this manufacture, or this process improvement. He loses everybody, and then he gets this motorcycle, and he's become this nerdy guy, he starts clocking and measuring these distances and how hard he's hammering this corner. Well, eventually one day he wipes this motorcycle out, and then he gets up off the ground and he's looking around, and like the earth is still. And around this curve, he looks over and he can see this wooded area. He looks down, he sees this motorcycle, the wheels spinning where he just, wiped out, and he's trying to capture his composure. And so something about this wooded area just kind of like opens up, kind of like the Red Sea parting, and these trees just separate, and he's like mesmerized by this, and he just knows for some reason it's calling him to come over there. And so he goes over this wooded area, and he walks in there, it just swallows him up. It closes up behind him, and he looks around, and there's this forest full of gigantic, huge trees like the California redwoods. And the trees are a little bit different because they're like covered in the skin, and they're like breathing. Like you can see them inhaling and exhaling, and they're alive. And as he looks down, there's this red granite pathway. And the pathway is like glowing. And to each side of this pathway, there's this green golf course cut, beautiful grass, and it's like neon. And he's like mesmerized by this. And he just, without any thought, starts walking down the path. And then he bumps into this man who's like gorgeous. And, Tommy's not gay, but when he looked at the guy, he's like, there's something about him special. This guy is just absolutely stunning, and he knew something was up there, but he just kept on walking until he got up to the guy, and the guy starts talking to him. And the way they're communicating, the guy just starts talking to him, but his mouth doesn't move, and Tommy can hear everything he's saying. And it's like they're communicating back and forth, but there's no lip moving. Then all of a sudden, Tommy snaps and says, "Hey, man, why aren't we talking with our lips?" And the guy's just staring at him with that beautiful face, and he says, "Well, the deal is, I am Satan, and you're going to be walking down this path. And when you get done, you're going to have some decisions to make. But I want you to know, I'm rooting for you to come hang out with me. I want you to end up with me." And Tommy's just in awe of this guy because he's thinking, man, this dude's just totally cool. There's something about him, He starts to walk away, and he thinks for a minute. He turns around and asks him a question. Well, the guy disappears and just goes on about this path. Well, he ends up meeting this little creature. It's a Bible creature. Whatever it is, it's, you'll read the book and find out. And the creature starts walking with them, and they meet all these different Bible characters. So as he's going down there, he'll meet all these different Bible characters, and they all have like a life story with like a moral to it that he captures. And then, I don't know if you've ever been to Disneyland, Disney World. They have a ride there called It's a Small World. And all the different countries are represented as you're floating in this little river through all these different scenes, like, the mountains for Norway and these different things like for China. And so at the end of the path, he sees this little boat, and it's like that ride. He jumps in the boat, and he's floating down there, and he reminisces by seeing all the Bible characters. He's waving to them as he's passing them, and he can reflect about what they were telling him and how their stories had some meaning to him. But yet he's still a geek and a nerd, and he just doesn't get the whole thing about life. He just knows that there's a Big Bang Theory, and he knows that's real. That's what he believes in. So he floats down there, he waves to them all, and he's reminiscing, and then all of a sudden, boom! He hits this big rock. And like thunder, whatever it was, he knew that it had so much power that it just literally just takes over him. And he falls to the ground. He hits that rock, he jumps out of the boat, he hits the ground, and he just puts his face down. And he knows that whatever this sonic boom is, it's so powerful that he can't look up at it. And he hears a voice. And needless to say, he looks up and there's Jesus. And he can finally see there's Jesus. And him and Jesus go down this other path. They start walking and talking. And he actually picks a fight with Jesus and argues with him. He's like, man, dude, Big Bang Theory. Jesus talks to him and tells him what his theory is about the Big Bang Theory and kind of shoots it down. He's like, well, how about evolution? They keep talking, and no matter what time he comes up with, what about biology? Let's go back to that. Well, Jesus answers him in every scientific fashion that makes sense to him. That's the truth. And Tommy gets his butt handed to him, in other words, because Jesus has a different answer. So as they go through this, Jesus, they part ways. He wakes up in a hospital, and the rest of it becomes kind of a comedic in a certain way because there's a twist at the end of the story there, and I don't want to tell you about. But the thing is, this book is something to read. It's not professionally written. I'm not a professional writer. Again, I was led by what I thought was the Holy Spirit of God to have me write this because there's a very big definition of something in the last 4 chapters. And if you read that, I don't know if you'll get it. But there's a very interesting fact about hell in there. And a lot of people have this dream that if there is a God and there is a heaven, well, there's surely a hell. And if that's the case, then you live forever, but you're hot. And I don't want to give a spoiler away here, but that's not the way I understand it. But the book will give you some information on that. So with that being said, again, my name's Eddy Parisi, Eddy V Parisi, like the city Paris with an I at the end. And I hope you get my book. I hope you read it. And I hope that you actually learn something. And if you're not a Christian, I think that that would be a good book for you to grab and read just because the story itself might make you laugh. I don't know. You might find it interesting. You might learn something. And if you are a Christian, I think you might find it really interesting because anytime you talk to somebody who's nerdy and geeky or would like to tell you the way the world works as far as God and the evolution and the Big Bang Theory and all that stuff, there's some answers in there. He even says, well, what about God? Where did God come from? There's a good answer to that. So if you don't mind, get my book and read it. It shouldn't take you more than a couple of days if you just, a couple hours here and there. Read the book and, rate it on Amazon, Goodreads. There's a bunch of different little book companies out there. If you would just, Google books, leave me a review. And even if it's not what you think it is or you don't like it, leave me a review. You don't have to beat me up too bad, but just leave something. And with that being said, thank you for hearing my video. I appreciate it very much. And I hope that you get a blessing out of reading my book. Again, thank you very much.